So we'll get started. Uh, Welcome everybody, Harry Ball, and I'm Chandrika, and I decided to do this class because I realized I wouldn't be satisfied without sharing what I've learned that helps people with recover from trauma, from negative life experiences, from issues that can be obstacles on the path of bhakti. And I believe that if devotees are um, psychologically healthy, with sweet relationships, in addition to the bhakti, that Krishna consciousness will spread very nicely, and we can take another step in creating a house that the whole world can live in. And so I'll get started on the seminar. Um, so to give you an overview of what we will cover in these classes, this first class will cover basics of therapeutic ethics and safety, and then go into an overview of what trauma is and how trauma impacts people. Following this, there will be experiential exercises we can all do together that help bring calm and grounding. Now, a lot of times people who have had a lot of trauma have what's known as a window of tolerance. Uh, so if someone's had a lot of chaos in their life, they can actually be more comfortable with chaos. So exercises that ground and calm can help expand that window of tolerance so that people can handle more calm, more peace, which, as we know, is conducive to focus on japa, conducive to bhakti. And and when devotees we work with have these tools to manage the stress and feel more stable when triggered, they have a better foundation for doing trauma work. So we also plan to take questions towards the end of each class. The second class will cover self-care, keys to relationship success, listening and communication, handling empathy. So for caregivers, it's really helpful to have some tools to be able to handle empathy if someone is an empath in particular. And also clearing a couple of common metaphysical challenges. So there'll be an experiential clearing exercise in that class. The third class, by popular demand, will focus on addiction. After that, there will be 3 classes with demonstrations, demos, and I'll be sending out an email requesting demos of brain spotting, which is an evidence-supported trauma therapy, very effective, that evolved from the therapeutic work of an EMDR teacher named David Grand. And the 7th class will commence 4 classes on ego state parts work, also known as internal family systems. I'm certified in internal family systems, and there will be demos. This is how I learned, first hearing the protocols and then viewing a therapist practicing those protocols and then practicing. So I strongly suggest practicing during the week, and you'll have an email that you can draw on for the practice. The final 2 classes will focus on hypnotherapy with ways to clear obstacles and access the source of patterns, then unburden the emotional underpinnings of those patterns. Learning how to facilitate a darshan will probably be included. And there will be experiential portions and demos. So we'll get started on this class with therapeutic ethics. So the most important of the 2 most important is confidentiality. So when you help someone, reassure them that what they share with you will be confidential, and then it's important not to share that with anyone. That creates a really safe therapeutic container that people don't often get with their friends. So it distinguishes a helping therapeutic relationship from a friendship relationship. So, and the other one is not getting sexually or romantically involved with someone that someone is helping. That's actually the number one way that licensed therapists lose their licenses. So that's pretty important. The rule of thumb for therapists, if someone is convinced they've met the person they're going to marry, love of their life, is to discontinue therapy, wait 2 years, and 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 then it's considered okay at that point. That's how important that particular ethics guideline is. If there's a trade for services, clear written agreements up front are recommended. So safety, it's helpful for safety to screen for suicidality, to know if someone's thinking about suicide. If a person has not only thoughts of suicide, but also a plan and means to carry out that plan, this is really high risk for suicide. So as a therapist, I would have as a licensed therapist, I would have a duty to protect in that case, and we'd call 911. With homicide, the same applies. There's a duty to protect an intended victim. There's also a duty to protect with child abuse and elder abuse. In these instances, confidentiality no longer applies. So, and discerning what's a real threat and what is someone blowing off steam or part of someone blowing off steam is a judgment call. So, intuition or consulting with someone who perhaps has more experience or wisdom um, uh, can really help with this also, consulting. So for safety, it's also recommended to screen for heavy drug or alcohol use and untreated serious mental illnesses such as bipolar 1, schizophrenia, and other illnesses that include psychotic features. In these cases, it's advisable to exercise extreme caution when doing trauma work, instead focusing on helping the person stabilize and discuss treatment options. A tool I use to help with screening is the adult cross-cutting symptoms inventory, like, first session with someone. I noticed there's a disclaimer on the inventory that it only be used for licensed clinicians in a clinical setting. Still, the inventory can give ideas what to ask. There is a mental health and suicide crisis line now, 988. I used to wonder why that crisis line here in Hawaii was so complicated and how could anybody possibly remember it. But now it's 988, so that's the good news. So it's a good idea to give someone we're working with that number in case they need it. And also that helps, maybe they don't need it, but they know someone who does. So that can be really helpful. They've studied this. Those crisis lines save lives. So now we're going to get into trauma, definitions of traumas, impacts of trauma. So there's different kinds of trauma. Acute trauma results from a single incident. So examples might be, a car accident, a single medical challenge, a single episode of interpersonal injury, natural disasters. Here on Maui, we had a major fire and our significant town completely burned down. So that's an example of an acute trauma. Chronic trauma is repeated and prolonged, such as domestic violence, or physical or emotional abuse, intimidation, this can include repeated criticism, living with criticism. Neglect is also a form of trauma because the stress responses that occur in the brain from a lack of care are the same as those that occur when a physical threat occurs. So this is really interesting. Um, that was from a study by DeBellis in 2005. Now, some people are dealing with complex trauma. And, as a therapist, I know that can definitely take more time to treat. Complex trauma is exposure to varied and multiple traumatic events, often of an invasive interpersonal nature. So people with complex trauma, often that started in childhood, quite often. One thing that's helpful to know is that trauma is cumulative when untreated. So multiple small t traumas, just repeated insults, um, bullying, uh, may equate or exceed a major capital incident, capital T trauma. So a lot of people, they think, oh, I haven't really had trauma, but then they maybe have some of the symptoms of trauma. And it's almost in some ways easier for people who've been through a major event. They know what it is. They know they need treatment. They seek treatment. So the small t traumas can really accumulate for people if left untreated. So fortunately, you'll be in a position to help treat the trauma that people are dealing with. So some of the trauma impacts, and there are a lot of them. Trauma affects the midbrain, the amygdala, the fight or flight. It affects the hormonal, leading to increased stress hormones. Trauma affects different levels, emotional, physical. So I'll list some of the trauma impacts here. One is losing hope for the future, which could include feeling hopeless about ability to practice sadhana or avoid offenses or ever attain the goal. Um, this is often characterized by a harsh internal critic with emotional burden of shame. And I come across this a lot. Flashbacks. Flashbacks are often accompanied, with major uh, kind of high impact traumas. For example, and having studied internal family systems, I have a slightly different view on flashbacks. But, flashbacks are when people feel like the trauma is happening now, and they can have intrusive images of what happened. In my experience with the ego state parts work, the oftentimes parts get stuck at the point of trauma. So we're all multiples in the sense that we have parts, the expression, a part of me wants to stay, a part of me wants to go, a part of me wants to do this, and part of me wants to do that. Well, quite often that is literally true. So after the Maui fires, I was working with some of the survivors, and there was actually someone in particular I worked with who did not have a significant trauma history, they were fine, and then they were in the fire, as so many people, running with practically nothing to escape the flames. And then they didn't feel safe at all to even leave the house. So with the ego state parts work, we just connected with the parts who were stuck in the fire. And this was just 3 weeks after the fire. So the parts were stuck 3 weeks before the sessions, and the fire was still happening. So of course they didn't feel safe at all. And so just by escorting the parts into the present, which for the part was 3 weeks into the future, all those symptoms cleared up. And the fear that was out of proportion to their current reality where the fire was no longer burning. So that's kind of how trauma can work. Um, feeling Another symptom is feeling distant or detached and or losing a sense of concern about others. Being unable to concentrate or make decisions. Internal distracting chatter. So these are kind of connected in the sense that they're ways the system will protect. Like, with trauma, a part of a person or parts will, in an effort to protect the person, may pull them out, may help them dissociate, may start generating internal chatter so that they don't have to feel the impact of the painful things that have happened. And feeling jumpy or getting startled easily. So there's physiological connections with that, and that's a common symptom. Um, I remember my husband and I were stalked by a tiger shark one time, and it actually even charged us. Fortunately, my husband did the right thing in that moment. And the next day, I'm like, we have to get back on the horse. We have to go snorkel again. Um, I had a full-blown startle response at a fish that was about, 8 inches long. And um, so that kind of startle response exaggerated. And when we get to brain spotting, I'll tell you how we cleared that up. Um, feeling on guard and alert all the time. This is particularly uh, prominent with, any interpersonal violence. Just, you know, feeling that need to protect, something might happen, something bad might happen. So one has to be on guard. Having upsetting dreams and memories. Uh, when working with dreams, I often just facilitate a conversation with the part who's generating the dreams. Having problems at work or school or with devotee relationships. All those things can be affected by trauma. Blaming yourself or having a negative view of self or the world, that is distinguished from true Vaishnav humility, which would be more characterized by ecstatic bliss and other, uh, so often I come across people who just beat themselves up, and it's a trauma impact, and it tends to clear up with trauma treatment. Avoidance of people, places, and things related to the event or events, and avoidance of feelings. So one of the top trauma teachers uh, mentioned that avoidance actually tends to cause more problems and issues than the trauma itself. So that I found to be true. Common physical responses, stomach upset and trouble eating. There's often vulnerable parts in the belly area. Trouble sleeping and feeling very tired. Um, when I work with people who have trouble sleeping, it can be helpful to just have them do a little journaling. Let the part that does the chatter and the keeping awake not only be heard, but also have an awareness that it's in writing, so I don't have to keep repeating it. That can be helpful with sleep. There's other things that can, relaxation. We'll do some in this class. Pounding heart, rapid breathing, feeling shaky, chronic pain or itching. I've I've come across this with a number of clients. It's quite often a part who is impacted by trauma or traumas, who's tried to get attention in other ways, and uh, generates pain or itching to get attention from the person. Uh, and I've definitely seen those. I mean, there can be other physical reasons, of course, but with trauma, um, I've seen that clear up just by the ego state parts work, the internal family systems. Sweating, severe headaches if thinking about the event or events, not keeping up with exercise, hydration, diet, or regular health care. So self-care being neglected is a trauma impact. Coping by addictive internet use or television, eating too much, smoking, or using alcohol or drugs. That's avoidance. Those are, and a lot of those are coping mechanisms for trauma that become their own problems. And we'll get more into that with the addiction class. Having immune issues or worsening medical problems, trauma can definitely impact the health. Common emotional responses, feeling nervous, helpless, fearful, sad, feeling shame even when not at fault. So often in trauma, people blame themselves even when there was a perpetrator and clearly it was not their fault. Especially with childhood trauma, that's so common, so much shame. Feeling shocked, numb, or not able to feel love or joy. Being irritable or having angry outbursts. Anger is protection. So often if trauma, especially severe trauma, it's a choice between anger or collapse and hopelessness. So anger is often just, a way to cope, but these kinds of coping mechanisms can continue even after the trauma is not happening and can start to create problems and issues. So trauma treatment can really help with that. Getting easily upset or agitated, issues trusting others, issues with trust, issues, for devotees, trusting deities or the Guru Varga, getting into conflicts or having a need to control. Trauma situations, people are, maybe they're trapped, they don't have control. And so out of that, a coping mechanism can be a need to control. Being withdrawn, feeling rejected or abandoned. And, particularly people who don't have a trauma and don't get support from, if it's in childhood, from their family, from friends, can feel abandoned, can feel like they really need extra support and maybe they're not getting it. Feeling detached or dissociated. We've mentioned the dissociation. So now we will get into some experiential resources to ground and calm. And these can help create a good foundation for doing trauma work, just having these tools to just, and also, like I mentioned, for expanding the window of tolerance. So for this, start by just checking your own stress level, 0 to 10. And now take 3 deep breaths with focus on the air in the back of the throat. That's where the vagus nerve can be calmed. And the vagus nerve has a big role in trauma, including it innervates the stomach. So focusing on the sensation of the air in the back of the throat, calming that vagus nerve. And nice lengthen exhales, which you can further lengthen your exhale by imagine you're blowing through a straw, like this. And now recheck your stress level. Rechecking your stress level after each one of these things we're doing, it can also help you or a person you're working with tell what really works, individually for that person. What's the best way to really go from a more stressed um, level to a more relaxed state? So now we'll do contract, relax. So with this, um, it's best to focus on what it's like to have contracted muscles under stress. What it's like maybe to, a sense of trying to control. And then after each position where we focus on uh, 10 seconds of stress, we'll do 10 seconds of relaxed. So what it feels like to have a relaxed state of surrender to the mercy of, of Guru, Gauranga, Radha Krishna, not the doer, not the need to be in control. And I will time it out here. So go ahead and uh, curl your toes up, contracting the top of the feet and shins for the first one. And relax. So toes up. Now curl the toes towards the heels that are still on the ground. And relax. Tighten the thigh muscles while also squeezing the legs together, tightening the inner thigh muscles, the adductors. And relax. Squeeze buttocks and hamstrings, the back of the upper legs. And relax. Relax those muscles. Pull your stomach in, squeezing your stomach in as hard as you can, as pulled in. This is not as painful, of course. And relax, letting your stomach return to its normal position. Take a deep chest breath while tightening the upper back. And relax. Pull your wing bones, your scapula together behind you. And relax. Pull your shoulders up towards your ears. And relax your shoulders. Tighten your hands into fists and bend your arms and make a muscle. Your brachial muscles. And relax your arms. Clench your jaw, not too hard, and scrunch your eyes at the same time, getting your face muscles. Lift your eyebrows up as high as they'll go. Tighten these muscles up in here. And relax. Go ahead and recheck your stress level, 0 to 10. Just noticing if there's a reduction in your stress level from contract, relax. And the next one is engaging the senses devotee style. So for this, observe which is most grounding, relaxing, which feels the most present. Um, so the first one, sound. Imagine hearing a kirtan, the mantras, the mridangas, the harmonium, the kartals. Imagine hearing ankle bells, concha, peacock, perhaps parrots. The next one, sight. Imagine seeing the beautiful deities of Radha and Krishna, their lotus feet, the colors and the beadwork of the outfit, the colors and shapes of the garlands. Noticing Krishna's flute, their faces, their lotus eyes. Smell. Imagine the aroma of incense, and the flowers on the altar or after they've been taken off the altar. The scented oil, the rose, sandalwood, all the fragrances associated with deity worship. And then imagine prasadam is served. Notice the aroma of the prasadam, the curries, and the sweets. And the next one, feeling. Imagine walking barefoot in the soft dust of Raj. The dust is warm and soft. Pick some dust up and let it pour through your fingers. Imagine now reaching into the Yamuna River or a Kund and picking up 2 palmfuls of water to place on your head, what that feels like. Then stepping your warm feet into the Yamuna River or Kund and feel the cool, sacred waters. Feel the sun and the purifying breeze. Now recheck your stress level once again. Which one of those sense exercises was the most calming and grounding for you? Which was the easiest to imagine? So it's recommended that you or the person you're working with now create your own script, including one or more than one of those senses, the ones that are most calming and grounding. And now the next one we're going to do is accessing you or a person's soul and being able to discern that from the ego state parts. So the parts form by, they form by trauma. They also form by repetitive experiences, which are not always negative, can be positive. So that's how parts are formed. And one thing that the founder of internal family systems found that is very consistent with how we view the soul. He found that every person has a core soul or self that is not impacted by any trauma or anything that person has been through. So we know from the Gita, the soul is not burnt by fire, withered by the wind. The soul does not die when the body dies. So that also applies psychologically. Some people who've experienced quite a lot of trauma, they feel like they're broken. They feel like there's something wrong with them. So it can be helpful to support someone to be able to access their soul and just have that reminder that they're not broken. And another thing he found that all parts of every person are good in the sense that the part's intention is to help the person. I mean, things can go awry when, like I mentioned, parts get stuck at the points of trauma. Parts can continue roles that are no longer helpful. They help the person survive when they were dealing with the trauma, but maybe, now they're in a more safe situation and those same habits and patterns are not helpful. So our souls are free from material stress, fears, and impacts of trauma. So this is an adaptation devotee style of an exercise to invite the parts to leave the person's body and to Um, so invite the parts to leave the person's body and to and knowing that very soon they'll be invited back, parts welcome back. And we're going to do this as a Govardhan parikrama. So first we're in Vrindavan. There's the Chakleshwar Mahadev temple. So go ahead and pray to Chakleshwar Mahadev to remove obstacles to entering Vraj. And we're not, of course, going to do the entire parikrama. So go ahead and start at Narada Kund at Kushum Sarovara. And for future, there's I'll send out something. There's online, there's the ISKCON Desire Tree, and also at purebhakti.com, and I'll send the links where there's pictures of parikrama. It can help with visualization. But many devotees have also been there. So imagine going to Narada Kund at Kushum Sarovara. Originally, there was a forest of flowers by this kund, and if you want, you can imagine that forest of flowers. This is where Yogamaya Purnamasi dipped Narada Muni to attain the form of a gopi, where he attained the 11 features that constitutes one's true identity. So go ahead and take bath at Narada Kund in Kushum Sarovara. Go ahead and invite parts who want to stay there until you return after parikrama. Let them know that you'll come back for them very soon. So you may notice parts just leaving wherever they are in or around your body and just choosing to stay there at Narada Kund. And now continue your parikrama to Manasi Ganga. This is where Krishna atoned for killing the bull, Vrishabhasura. Go ahead and take bath in Manasi Ganga. It's considered okay to swim there also. After taking bath, invite parts who want to stay there to atone and purify until you return. Let them know you'll be back soon, so they have that reassurance. And now go ahead and go to Govinda Kund. This is where Indra performed Abhishek of Krishna to atone for trying to inundate Vrindavan. Go ahead and take bath with that mood of atoning. And after taking bath, invite parts who want to stay there until you return. Again, reassuring them that you'll be back soon. And now continue your parikrama to Sarabi Kund. I love it. I love Sarabi Kund. By bathing here, all one's sins, offenses, and unwanted desires are dispelled, and one can attain Vraj praying. This is where, with Indra's Abhishek, this is where the Sarabi um, milk created a kund. I remember when last time we were there, devotees were doing 1, 2, 3, and the devotees from Maui, where I live, all just got in and swam around the whole kund. So go ahead and take bath if you feel like swimming, swim. And invite the parts who want to stay at Sarabi Kun to continue having any perceived sins, offenses, unwanted desires dispelled, reassuring those parts that you'll be back soon to welcome them back. And continue your parikrama to Uddhava Kund. This is where Uddhava, who resembles Krishna, was sent by Krishna to pacify the gopis who were in such intense separation. It was dangerous for their life. And then Uddhava experienced and was captivated by their higher prema than even the prema that Uddhava, as one of Krishna's best friends, had. Go ahead and if you'd like to, take bath in Uddhava Kund. And invite parts who want to stay here until you return, reassuring them you'll be back soon. And now continue your parikrama to Shamakun. Take bath in Shamakun. And here, take a minute to invite any remaining parts, such as self-like managers. These are parts that might seem like they are who you are. So it can be invite those parts, letting them know that you're just going over to Radhakund. You'll be very close and you'll be back very soon. These self-like managers are often, accustomed to managing someone's life, to really being blended with the person. And now as self, stroll over to nearby Radhakund and just experience your pure, loving, compassionate, patient, peaceful, self-satisfied, confident, clear soul. Take bath in Radhakund, which Krishna said is as dear to him as Radha herself. If you'd like, you can imagine it is now midnight on the appearance of Radhakund, and you're taking bath at midnight, where the benediction is that by taking bath in Radhakund at this time, you will attain pure love of Krishna, of the quality of Radha's love. After taking bath, continue to feel the pure qualities of your soul. This can help you as a helper recognize when, and it's not all or nothing, when you have enough self energy, enough soul energy to be able to do effective helping work with someone, and also can, help you to recognize when, if you're facilitating a session where a person's self or soul is supporting and helping one of their parts, that therapy is generally done one part at a time. You'll be able to recognize when that person has enough self, enough soul, um, and when it behooves the helper to help support them to clear other parts, to support other parts, to give space for effective therapy to happen. Feeling that soul energy, that self energy. And now we're gonna do the parikrama mostly in reverse. Um, actually going back, going to Shamakun and then doing it over again, this time collecting parts, welcoming them back into your system. All parts are welcome. So go straight up. Oh, well, if there's a part who really wants to stay longer, and they're like, I want to stay at this kun. It's okay to allow them to stay and just let them know that they can come back whenever they're ready. So, so go straight back to Shamakun. Welcome back the self-like managers, any other parts that are there. And once those parts are welcome back, go ahead and go to Narada Kund at Kushum Sarovara. Welcome those parts who've been waiting there. Welcome parts back at each place as you continue to Manasi Ganga. Welcoming parts back there. Govinda Kund. Welcoming back parts there. Sarabi Kund. And Uddhava Kund. And just do an overall welcome back any other parts that may have chosen another place on the course of the parikrama. Now return to where you are sitting, taking this seminar. If you want, you can ground by feeling your feet. You can imagine roots going into the earth. You can look around the space where you are, or you can look around the room where I am and just notice 3 things that you like. This is very grounding. This is also a quick grounding. If someone just starts to kind of seem to space out or dissociate, that's a very quick grounding, just looking around, noticing 3 things that you like. So this next part I was going to do if time allows, and I think time does allow. So this is introduction to family systems. So we studied family systems in the master's program I did, marriage and family therapy. Um, a lot of people who study other modalities for therapy don't learn family systems, so I thought it'd be helpful to cover a bit of family systems. So one thing, especially if you're working with couples, if you're working with families, it can be helpful to just have a bit of grounding. Um, and families as well as temples or spiritual communities. They're systems. So a change in one person actually has a changing impact on the entire system. People think they have to change everyone in order for change to happen, and that's actually not accurate. So families systems tend to seek to reduce stress and conflict by triangulating a family member or maybe a community member, such as a child, and identifying that person, or it could be persons, as the problem. Teens are often triangulated in a family. Something called double binds communication generates symptoms of distress as well as sometimes severe psychological symptoms. And this occurs when there are when the person's trapped in the family, which people are, or in the community perhaps. So this occurs when these contradictory messages are also often on different levels, like verbal, physical, or verbal in tone. Like someone might say, you know, I love you, and then maybe give a hug, but they're pulling back as they're hugging. Or they say, I love you, and then maybe there's a facial expression or a tone that sends an opposite message. And as I mentioned, this is intensified when there's no escape, like a closed system, a family or a closed group. Families also tend to have intergenerational transmission processes of emotional states, patterns of reacting, etc., that are passed through multiple generations. Trauma can be passed through generations. So with internal family systems, there's a protocol for releasing ancestral or intergenerational trauma. With hypnotherapy, it's possible to just go to the original trauma in a family and do healing and clearing at that time. So some of the family systems teachers, there's Bowen. Bohemian family therapy talks a lot about differentiation. Differentiating thoughts and feelings has been found to reduce anxiety. So if someone's upset, it can actually reduce anxiety just to take a pause. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And I found this to be true. This reduces anxiety. Also, a different kind of differentiation is differentiating from family of origin, differentiating who you are, your values, etc., from the values and precepts of the family of origin. This has been shown to reduce anxiety. And I've experienced that, when people feel like they just have to, follow the precepts of their original family they grew up with. They can have a lot of anxiety from that. And just uh, just taking the time or in therapy, identifying like who I am, what are my dreams, what are my values, can be helpful. Also, normalizing that a devotional path may be different in many ways from the norms of one's birth family. There also may be, Srila Prabhupada, other acharyas have also said that they don't want blind followers. So there may be ways that who you are is different from, from certain aspects, certain norms. There's another family systems therapy called solutions-focused family therapy. So this helps support from a negative bias to more optimism. We're basically wired, and it's kind of a survival thing to notice what is wrong. It's very helpful in survival situations. There's a fire, run. Um, so with solutions-focused therapy, questions include what went well this week, if it's weekly therapy, month, etc. Also, if a miracle occurred, if the helper waved their magic wand and your devotional, relational, emotional, etc. goals were achieved, what would that look and feel like? So these are some of the solutions focused family therapy. If someone's strictly doing that, uh, it's just all, positive for that. Another family therapy we studied is narrative family therapy. So that's the precept of that is that the stories families tell influence the outcomes, or the stories also individually that people tell influence how their life is, and that the narrative itself, the story itself, can be changed to a new story. So shifting those narratives. Structural family therapy we also study. So that includes concepts like cross-generational alliances, the parentified child. A lot of people who grew up in dysfunctional families, maybe there was uh, alcohol, drug abuse, or other issues. A lot of times a child will become parentified. They'll be like a parent, taking care of maybe other children, taking care of the parents if they're not functional. Um, and that can make things more complicated for that child. Also, in structural family therapy, they stress the importance of the executive, the parental subsystem, and the importance of clear boundaries, um, and 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 how it's helpful for parents to be on the same page, to at least, if two people are opposites and they're together as a couple, to at least move a little towards, some kind of cohesiveness for the benefit of the children. Um, Also, rigid versus permeable versus flexible boundaries. So if boundaries are too rigid, it's not ideal. If they're too flexible, it's not ideal. I mean, if they're too permeable, not ideal. So firm yet flexible is what they recommend in structural family therapy. Other helpful info, if you wanted to review it, for working with people. There's Erickson's stages of development. For instance, birth to 2 is when a child learns basic trust versus mistrust. My needs will be taken care of. That sort of basic trust, mistrust. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There's Bowlby and Ainsworth's attachment theory. And there's the 4 types of parenting styles and how children are affected. So that I'll email all this to you. So now, um, now we'll take questions, and chances are we won't have time for everyone's questions. Feel free to send an email. Um,
Me?
Welcome, Isabella.
Oh, hi. Um, hi. I noticed when you were going through the five senses that you didn't do taste. Was that purposeful?
Oh, um, not purposeful. Include taste.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Yeah, taste is often a very grounding and centering sense for someone to focus on.
Is that your whole question, Isabella? Can I go to Lika? Okay.
Hi, Krishna.
Alika, welcome. Hare Krishna.
Everything was so amazing. So I'm just wondering, will we have, because I was like frantically trying to write everything down. I'm just wondering if you will send like a lot of what you're talking about.
Yes. And so for future classes, there's no need to frantically write it all down.
Okay, good.
I'm so glad you found it helpful.
Yeah, it was amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I plan to email this to everyone right after the class. So
That's amazing. Thank you.
that, and also for, if you're practicing with people, it's helpful to have the script to not
Yeah,
have to remember everything.
yeah.
And also, I'll be asking everyone who is okay with sharing your email with each other as a list, to let me know that. Otherwise, I respect people's privacy about their email address. If you have each other's email, then you can practice with each other, which can be really helpful to, that way you get to receive a session and give a session of whatever it is we're covering. And including taste. I'll go ahead and type in taste before I send it out. Did you have
Okay. My next.
Rasangi? Haribol.
That was so wonderful. There was so much in there, and I loved it. And as far as the relaxation techniques, you had me at the second one. My stress was all gone. And then I went to Vrindavan. Not a problem, but it was wonderful. And as far as the parts thing, and I have had some parts work done, and I know some, but I wasn't exactly sure. Maybe you'll give a further description of the different parts that we have, because I don't know if anybody knows that so much, but I think that's useful. And
Oh,
I
definitely.
wasn't sure at the different kunds what I wanted to leave there, and then maybe I didn't want to bring it back with me. Was it supposed to be things that are bothersome, parts of me that I don't want tracking along, or parts of me that I value and I need, but I just wanted to leave for the time being? So I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, so we leave this up to the parts. Um, and I'm glad you asked this question because I definitely understand what you're saying. Parts that are carrying burdens, it can seem like, well, why would I, if they're still carrying that burden? Um, uh, Actually, and I will have 4 classes on IFS on the parts work, so we'll cover much more in depth. Um, but it's very common for people to want to push parts away, and the pushing away, the rejecting, um, uh, is not helpful for the part. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Like with IFS, it's like all parts are welcome. That doesn't mean all behaviors are welcome. All parts are welcome. And then, it's amazingly transformational for people to uh, offer the parts the opportunity to be heard, understood, and self is not pushing away. Self is not judging. Self is unconditionally loving towards the parts. So the more self energy, the more the parts can feel welcome, can open up, and can heal.
Wow. And also then the goal at the end is to blend them in, right? It's not that you blend them so that they're part of you, but they're not problematic anymore.
Exactly. So parts are when healed, they're supporting the self in an adaptive, a helpful way, and they're
Cool.
cooperating with each other. So not the polarizations that can happen when parts are competing with each other or at odds with each
Right.
other. So the whole system is more cooperative. And the parts can shift their roles. like say there's an internal critic and that part's job has been to criticize, maybe to protect the person from external criticism that happened. Quite often internal critics they want something that is more effective. So they want to encourage. They want to do kind of the opposite of what they've been doing. That's the most common thing I've noticed with parts, taking on a new role. Although some parts just want to do something creative, or they're like, I've been working so hard, I just want to rest. I don't even want to think about a new job. I just want to rest. I want a vacation. So yeah, we'll do a lot more with the IFS with the parts work.
So wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes. Go ahead and unmute that.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome,
So
Hare
in the
Krishna.
beginning, I didn't realize that my laptop was the sound was down. So I think Pranada was saying something, maybe, and I didn't hear anything. So I just want to apologize that I wasn't ignoring anyone. And thank you for the wonderful class. Yeah, my name is Irina, and we haven't met. Just exchange one email, and I'm glad to be here. And I want to share my feedback and my personal experience through the class and a little bit. I really like the like this long list of all trauma symptoms. Like I've never had such an extended one. And for my personal consideration, there is a part which gave me a compassion to one of my parts. Like there's one trade, and I was like, okay, this is my anarhas, okay, it's coming from this and that, but I still had this like a judgment around that part. And now when I see where it's coming from, I experienced more compassion towards it. Therefore, there's like more ease. And yeah, and thank you for bringing. I enjoyed being in the parikrama, which I've never been to. So it was a wonderful experience. Thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
And another one, actually the second exercise where contract and relax gave me a little bit of anxiety because turns out my facial muscles were not cooperating. And I never noticed that. And it was a big discovery. And I felt like a little unease, like, oh my gosh, it doesn't cooperate with me. So my stress level went up there. But it's good to know.
Did it come down with the parikrama?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. We actually, do you have any other question? Thank you so much. And actually, I noticed there's not more questions. If someone just has another comment about their experience, we still have some time, or we can finish class early. That's fine too.
I actually do have a question. I was just, when you introduced the different types of trauma, I think I just missed on something there. You were talking about acute trauma, about chronic trauma, and complex trauma. And was it another type of trauma that you were mentioning?
Those were the three.
The three were, okay. So it wasn't.
And also I will send out the script that I followed, so you'll have it, and that'll be helpful.
Okay. Well, thank you.
I couldn't figure out how to raise my hand, so I just unmuted instead.
Oh gosh.
Thank you very much. I also, like Palika, voraciously took notes. So, but I'm glad. I look forward to having your notes come in the email. also, it was very, very sweet to be able to do the pilgrimage, to do with the devotional guidance. It's very nice. Excellent. So thank you for taking the time to prepare that for ourselves and other devotees you've worked with, because it means so much more when it's connected to our values and our heart's desires. So thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome, Kosha. How was it for you? Did you notice like your stress level and what seemed to be most helpful for you?
Well, even just doing the physical with contracting and relaxing the muscles shifted the stress level right away. And then everything we did, it was like, oh, these are all really good tools to have, because different people, different times, different things will work best for them. So to have the options of different ways to relax, to decrease the stress level. And I was also feeling like I didn't really understand that much about the parts. And so I'm looking forward to learning more about that. And then also, yeah, just a lot of the different therapies that you mentioned. So, it just whetted my appetite to learn more and more. And looking forward to all your classes.
I know it's a lot. I'm condensing years of education and so many hours of training,
But
weeks and weeks.
you're an excellent teacher, and the presentation is relatively easy to follow. And because we're getting to do it experientially with you, it's going to be more memorable. So thank you for giving us the space to do it with you instead of just giving us the information. That was also very, very helpful.
Thank you. And also, we had that meeting last week and I was able to incorporate, more addiction, more mention of trust. So any suggestions, feel free, to mention now or to email me.
I have another one.
Okay.
From the beginning, the safety things, I totally understand confidentiality. And would you say that's appropriate here? But I mean, we're not sharing such personal information, but that may happen. So then we would definitely want to keep that confidential, right? And then the other
Right.
part is,
Yeah. There's a release for this class that it's being filmed, potentially to use with other
Okay.
devotees. And yet it's a good practice. Like if people are sharing personal things, uh, maybe someone shares something and they let me know they don't want it to go out there, then it won't, if someone feels strongly about that. So it's a good practice within this group also to keep confidentiality. And if you're practicing one-on-one, and people share things, um, respect their confidentiality by not bringing that up in the group. So,
and I also wonder about the other, as far as like assessing for suicidality, and like, unless you have a license, then we know that you're in, and you could be in trouble if you don't do a good job and do the right thing, so to speak. But in this group, where people aren't bound by licenses, what is the liability for them, where there is none? I'm a little confused for the rest of the group on how stringent those things are to follow, and if they're causing anxiety in anybody. I don't know.
well, there's a lot of people who are helping other people who are not licensed therapists. There's so many coaches,
Yes.
and there's people who are just natural therapists. They just haven't been through all those years of schooling and supervision, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so there's a lot of people helping other people. And, it's a personal choice if they think that, um, that someone might sue them because they're helping this person. They can have the person sign a release. Um, I don't, some people have just sort of a general liability policy for themselves. I mean, people have their own um, sort of concern about liability that they have. That said, it's okay to help people. It's legal, and a lot of people are doing it without a license as a therapist to practice those things. Certainly, people who are licensed have more at stake. Like if a licensed person violates confidentiality, they could lose their whole license, their profession gone. If they get intimately involved with a client, same thing. So there's that at stake. So some people who are receiving therapy feel safest with a licensed therapist, and also the extent of the training that's there. That said, I really, and I've invited people into this class who are devotees who would like to help other devotees. And there aren't enough licensed therapists to help all the devotees who could benefit from trauma-focused work. The incidence of trauma is extremely high. I mean, one time I read there was a study that something like 83% of the people had had some trauma within the prior 3 months of the study. Like the incidence of trauma, because trauma is so encompassing, is very, very high.
I'm just saying that I feel like your idea of everyone drawing up their own list of, and then having it signed, that will protect them, right? It could protect them and create an agreement with the person about, you know what I mean?
That's an option. That's an option
Yeah, I
for
like
sure.
that. Thank you.
Mm. Looks like we have one last question. That will be the last question.
Yeah, I was curious, in your experience, have you applied family systems theories to an individual with like in the context of the Sangha?
Yes, I've worked with devotees and I've applied, particularly the differentiation, and solutions focus, especially, if I notice someone who's negative uh, focus and negative bias is impacting their life. And so it becomes a focus for the work we do together, for sure. I've um, I've done less family work with devotees. I've done family work with not devotees here in Hawaii. Um, Definitely, if someone wants to work with devotee families, that could be really amazing.
Sounds muted. I was curious, kind of also like even kind of beyond the immediate family, but just like in general, thinking about like the community dynamics, right? Because it is also like can be family-like, especially some of those very close relationships. So like that kind of curiosity of if that would apply here, or is it kind of more specifically like relation, like blood relation family application?
Oh, it can definitely be applied to other systems. I mean, people apply it to workplace, which can be like a family, to uh, certainly temples are like a family, and or can be, and communities or subsets of communities. So yeah, for sure. Thank you, everybody. It's been delightful. I am so honored that I have the opportunity to do this and that you've come and made it all possible. Thank you so much. And I will see you next week.